Welcome back to The Jump. It's October 9th, 2023. I'm Rich Bowers, and I am joined by two of my favorite people. We have someone who you may be familiar with from listening to our podcast on product engineering, maybe even recently. Good afternoon, Charles Dunn. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Rich. Thank you for having me again.
Thanks for coming on. And then we have Sydney Morris, our senior talent development expert, who was recently featured in an article from Cognitia on crafting a path towards success in corporate. Thanks for coming on, Sydney.
Yeah, hello. I am happy to be here.
Awesome. With that, let's jump into it. So our first topic of the week, DALL-E 3. It is everywhere you look right now. If I go onto Reddit, I see it everywhere. If you go onto LinkedIn, there's pictures there. And who else to explain what DALL-E 3 is than Charles Dunn himself? Charles, what is DALL-E 3?
All right. So DALL-E 3 is the latest version of OpenAI's text-to-image generator tool. It will read a natural language prompt, associate those, it will parse that natural language prompt, associate that prompt with tagged images that it has in its corpus of data, and then generate an image that corresponds to those tags. And it is a very technically impressive piece of software that is able to generate very cohesive looking images from very disparate prompts. At the time of recording, it is very new. I have not had a chance to play around with it all that much, but according to the OpenAI prompts, they are saying that compared to something like Midjourney, Midjourney is very good at generating fanciful images, whereas DALL-E 3 is geared more towards generating realistic images, potentially for business applications rather than artistic applications.
That's a lot of information right there. Yeah, no, it is. And some of the follow-up abilities that you have to change and make alterations on the images are quite impressive. And that's because it is native to ChatGPT, right? It is going to be right in that same, I guess, model. And you can produce it through normal questions and prompts, right?
Correct. It also, they're advertising it as having many safeguards, potential safeguards for generating prompts that will generate replications of the work of living artists, that to avoid paying those artists. So that's avoiding one controversy. They also claim that there's protections against generating malicious images, but as of like I said, very new at time of recording, there is people have figured out how to bypass those safeguards and are already generating some awful images and flooding the internet with them. So that aspect of it still a work in progress, and that is a very hard problem to solve. The technical aspect, generating cohesive images, it's great at that. Protecting against humans, it's not so great at that yet.
And so is the stage of AI that we're in, right? I mean, we're getting people who are doing the jailbreaks and all of that. I'm sure they're right on top of it. And that's what we're getting here at The Jump. News, right? That was very recent, and we've seen that over there. One just thing to clarify, Charles, too, as well, you mentioned DALL-E 3, they will decline requests for image generation in the style of living artists. So living artists can opt out of it, which is pretty neat.
Yes.
Before we leave this topic, Sydney, you also do a lot of our marketing or Cognitia's marketing. Are you going to be using DALL-E 3?
Yeah, I definitely want to check it out. I've already had some experience with Midjourney, and it was very interesting to see how some of those images came out. It was pretty incredible. So yeah, I will definitely be checking out the DALL-E 3.
Awesome. Can't wait to see it. Now, while we're with Sydney, let's jump to another thing that's been in the news all week. Lex Friedman's podcast with Mark Zuckerberg. Now, one of our own on the screen here is the one who updates me on a lot of these podcasts. So, Sydney, tell me about it. What was so impressive or so unique about Lex's interview with Mark?
Yes. So I just know, from the history of the metaverse, a lot of the avatars looked very cartoonish. And now with this new release, I believe it's called Quest 4. That's what's going to be released, like the gaming of it. But
The new
this,
like Oculus.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
But the new avatars that are being released and what they wanted to talk about, it was very realistic, almost a little scary to look at. Just seeing how you could see the smile lines, the wrinkles, strands of hair, their eyelashes. It was just so detailed and what these new avatars are going to look like. And it was very interesting to hear them talk about the scanning process of how they make them look realistic. It's a little scary, to be quite honest with you.
It was a unique podcast. I had a chance to look at it as well. So basically, as Sydney shared, it was Mark and Lex in the metaverse, as they're saying, and we'll get to Charles on a comment on that in a second. But what they did was they went to screening, I guess, buildings. So specific building locations where they screened the whole body of Lex and Mark in this situation and threw them virtually into the metaverse. So not something that typically you and I or most listeners can do currently. But the game plan is to get that to the phone eventually to be able to scan yourself, facial features, and it looks so incredible realistically, right? So
Yes. And the other kind of scary thing about it, and I'm sure it's just so new to everyone. It can come off a bit scary, but another note that Lex made in the podcast was how some people might dye their hair or get certain surgeries done or lose a lot of weight to go before they go and get their scan. And then they'll go get their scan, and then in their avatar, that's what they look like, and then maybe later on down the road that is not them anymore. So it's kind of scary how that you can also customize them to different body types. If you want a different eye color, you'll be able to change your eye color in the metaverse. And with how realistic they want to do it, and how Mark's motivation for this is to take the digital world and bring it as close as possible into the real world. That is pretty intense information, to say the least.
You know what? Just changing eye color is a little bit less extreme than turning into a dragon, as my avatars are now, I guess. So, on this note, Charles, I know you and I have talked about the metaverse a ton. What did you think about this podcast?
There is no definition of the metaverse that excludes the internet as it currently exists, but also includes magical fantasy technology that will never exist. What you are describing is VR chat, a thing that we already have. So every time someone hypes up the metaverse, I'm waiting for the part that does not include apps that are already freely available and you can just download them. So is it very impressive that Mark Zuckerberg and Lex Friedman got a very expensive process to scan their bodies and be projected into the most technologically advanced VR headset in the world? Yes, that is very impressive. But it does not represent any meaningful advance in technology so much as a refinement of existing technologies. The metaverse is basically a hype word to sell concepts that already exist, but they're more expensive now.
I love the hot takes. This is what we get with Charles Dunn, and I love it. Yes, and certainly just from a step quick back too. Obviously, a lot of great, interesting discussion, but I did feel a little bit like an advertisement I was watching. Jumping over to our third topic, and we'll make this one pretty quick because I do want to get to the topic of the week. Yes. Just recently, a California governor vetoed a bill requiring human drivers to supervise autonomous trucks over a certain limit. As probably a lot of folks know, California has been leading the charge in autonomous vehicles, right? Google cars and everything out over there. By the way, New Jersey, not one of those leading it. Charles, when you hear this, what did you take away from that, that the governor vetoed this?
So autonomous vehicles in urban environments like New Jersey and San Francisco, frankly, is a terrible idea. That it does not work nearly as well as had been advertised, and is actually quite a threat to public safety and actively dangerous in many situations. However, autonomous long-haul trucking is probably a better application of the technology, because if you think about it, in urban environments, you have people crossing the street, you have lots of not just people crossing the street, but all kinds of like unexpected situations that can pop up at any time, just hundreds of times per trip. In fact, if you look into it, autonomous vehicles are terrible dealing with pigeons. Like pigeons always mess up the autonomous vehicles. Like whenever they see a pigeon, they stop short, even though the pigeon's just going to fly out of the way. So that creates a threat to other drivers in the urban environment. Whereas if you imagine trucking as long stretches of very repetitive driving, where there's very few changes in environment, very few situations that you have to deal with. Maybe there's going to be like a large animal crossing the street, crossing the road in the middle of nowhere. That is a much more controllable situation than the chaos of where millions of people are trying to live in a very small area. So I am not a supporter of autonomous vehicles as a means of transportation within a city. But suburban and rural applications where the autonomous systems have just fewer variables to deal with, I think that's a better use case.
And there may be even a nice spot too where drivers fall asleep at night. They're drowsy, right? So on that long haul side, the autonomous vehicle, that doesn't need to take a nap. So I can guess your answer to this. So I'm gonna throw it to Sydney. Sydney, would you feel safe knowing that these large trucks don't have a human in it?
I definitely do not feel safe with large trucks, but I do know, and I did some research. So there's already autonomous cars that exist, like in Texas, for example. And they're very successful. They're smaller cars in, the metropolitan areas that do food delivery, and there's no one in the car. So there's a huge company out there that has started to test them, and it's right now it's been successful. So I think with smaller cars, let's start there and do a lot of training and testing on it first. But I will say, with the bill that was vetoed, the bill would also stop the testing from happening in California. I disagree with that. I do think that they should still continue, testing them and seeing if we can find something that works. So I think that's the big thing about this bill, and something that needs to be looked at. So I do not think they should stop the research and testing it out.
Seems like a deeper dive is necessary. Last point on this, just so you all are aware. As of my recent research, 18 states allow for autonomous vehicles outside of commercial use. 29 allow for commercial use at this time. Jumping over to our cool tech of the week. Every week, what we want to do is keep you in the know of something that is just very popular, or there are new updates. And this week, we had Microsoft 365 Copilot being released, I believe, September 26th. So a couple, 2 weeks ago, but people had some time to play with it a bit. Charles, pretty quickly, what do you think? What is 365 Copilot?
So Microsoft is incorporating their generative AI technology into the entire 365 suite. I guess my age demographic would probably think of it as Office. I don't know if Microsoft has completely lost the Office branding by now, but that would be Word, PowerPoint, and very interestingly, Teams. So one thing that that's probably generating a lot of the buzz, at least in our group, is Microsoft Teams will now generate summaries of meetings. So
very cool.
if you're at a meeting and there is and if you miss a meeting, it will grab the recording of the meeting, transfer that it will grab speech to text, pass that text to its to its generative AI model, and summarize what happened in the meeting automatically.
That's
And
awesome.
teams will just do that. So that is a very powerful piece of technology that they're just incorporating directly into the 365 suite.
I mean, how cool is that, right? And then also with that feature, I believe you can ask questions about the meeting without even scanning it, and it will give a response. As we're short on time, just a couple other quick updates to be aware of. Outlook, you can ask Copilot to summarize email threads. So if you go on vacation, you come back to thousands of emails, get a little summary right there. Word, you can rewrite paragraphs. They can give formatting as well, which I know will save me a lot of headaches. And then Excel, cool visualizations. Did you look into this, Charles? I know this
Yes.
based on Python, right?
Yes. So this is kind of separate from the generative AI piece. There's Python in Excel now. You can run Python functions directly in your spreadsheets. So you don't have to import your spreadsheet data into a Python interpreter in order to work with all of the very powerful Python libraries. You can just do it directly in Excel. And this is definitely going to encourage more bad habits where people keep thinking Excel is a database. It's not. But now you can use it even more like a database. So it's cool tech, but developers are going to get mad at you if you keep using Excel as a database.
Speaking from a true developer,
Yes.
right? Forecasting and charts are also available. Sydney, do you want to add anything to our 365 chat here?
I'm excited to use it. For someone that has ADHD like me, being in meetings, sometimes if I'm not taking extensive notes, I will miss something. So it is nice. I'll still take my own notes, but it's nice to know that I can have that on the side in case I feel like I did miss something. I can go back on it and look. That's incredible.
Amazing. Another wonderful feature that this could happen. So, bigger question as we wrap up here, is Clippy coming back? That's what we really want to know in this Gen AI form.
I mean, Microsoft is missing a golden branding opportunity.
Seriously.
Come on, bring back Clip. We all hated him before. I don't know why. Come on, give Clippy a second chance, Microsoft.
The nostalgia is real. And for our conversation here on The Jump, I'm Rich Bowers. Sydney, Charles, until next time. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.